I was lying on a roll mat on the floor of my mum's spare room, staring up at the magnolia ceiling and wondering what on earth I was going to do with my life. This is the story of how I nearly gave up creativity in recovery. And it's also a video to talk about why it's important to talk about these things. The importance of sharing honestly, the importance of being upfront about the difficulties that I've faced as an artist in recovery, and also to try and carry a bit of a message that even when things aren't always going right, you know, when things are going very, very wrong, in fact, there is always a reason to keep going, however slowly, however small the steps might be. One of the lowest points I've ever experienced in my life was not when I first came into recovery, but in fact when I was over 2 years clean, sober. You know, they say that bad things come in threes, don't they? And I found myself, as I said, lying on a roll mat in my mum's spare room, back in my hometown, staring at the magnolia ceiling and wondering what on earth I was going to do. My grandma had died a couple of months prior to that moment. I didn't have any money. I was working this horrible factory job that I hated, you know, stacking pallets all day. And the reason I was doing all this stuff and trying to make money is because I was going to move back to Canada to start this new life. And then that didn't work out either. And so I found myself with all the grand plans I'd made, had kind of shattered in a sense. Emotions all over the place. It was a really difficult time, not only for my creativity, but for my recovery as well. There were moments where I wasn't sure if I would make it. You know, I felt very drawn to picking up a drink again. And I think there were a lot of very valid reasons that I may well have done that, you know, on an alternative timeline. I think the pressure of all of those moments arriving simultaneously or near simultaneously was incredibly great. And it's some kind of miracle that I didn't, I think. I was very fortunate to have a good network and a loving family and good friends around me at that time. So, like I mentioned, I had nothing going on. I had no money. You know, my grandma had died and heartbroken, having to move back to my hometown after travelling all over the world and thinking that my life was set forever, you know, and thinking I had it all going on and everything was made and stable. And then life turned up and said, in fact, no, we need to shake this boat a little bit. You know, I felt empty, I felt doubt, I felt fear, I also felt numb as well. And maybe it's a bit of an oxymoron to say that you're feeling all these emotions and also numb at the same time, but my experience of being in addiction and also being in recovery is that there's been this kind of great weighty numbness that's always been on me during the difficult times. Even today, several years after that moment, you know, 5.5 years in recovery now, I still feel numb a lot of the time, and I'll probably dig into that in future videos. So if it is something that you're interested in or you've experienced that, let me know, and I can definitely unpack it quite a lot. But there was a pivotal moment, you know, and when I was lying on the floor staring at the ceiling, I don't want to mythologize this sort of thing that happened to me, but there was a bit of a moment where I was like, okay, what am I actually going to do here? You know, I had to start making a plan. I had to start thinking, so, you know, really, like, am I going to let this get the better of me? Or am I going to try and get the better of it eventually? And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen straight away. It didn't magically fix itself, and I wasn't able to magically fix it, even though I was putting in a lot of work on my own, you know, development as a person and my own recovery and my own creativity. But the first thing I did, or one of the first things I did, which was part of this decision of becoming the person I am today, was started a self-portrait. And I love painting. I'm an oil painter. That's what my studio's all about. And I love painting from life, which is from direct observation. So what I did in this spare room at my mum's house is I set up 2 mirrors, and I started this self-portrait of myself in 2 mirrors, kind of one mirror pointed at a different angle. One was on my face and my torso, the other mirror was pointed at, you know, my midsection, and captured a bit of that. And I still think to this day it was one of my strongest pieces of artwork, because it really captures that intensity of that moment in time. And that painting, I think, more than anything, really gave me the kind of green light to go ahead and continue making artwork. I've touched on these small daily acts in the previous video, and I'll continue to touch on them because I think they're very important. That painting became my daily act. You know, I didn't really have anything else going on, so every day I would go up to my room and I would just spend the day painting that picture, you know, layer upon layer, sanding it back, painting more on it, changing it a little bit, sanding it back, painting more on it, getting loads of texture. And it was that daily act that really saved me in that moment. You know, there was an inner shift that started to happen as well. A little bit of light perhaps started to peep in through the cracks, as they say. And I started on a new journey, even though I thought that my recovery journey was done. You know, I thought I've got 2 years clean here, like everything's all good. And yeah, life has a funny way of throwing things at us, doesn't it? That moment shaped the way I see art and sobriety in ways I could never have imagined, you know. And that, I think, it's a really hard thing for me to express, because at the time it was like the shittest moment in my life, like bar none, you know. It was the worst place I've ever been. But unfortunately we have to go to really dark and desperate and deep, depraved places to know what the good places are like. And I'm in a place now which is still burdened by difficulties with mental health, my own personal struggles, an inability to stay focused and to keep on topic, and also a general sense of not really knowing where I'm going, generally, you know. There are times when I feel hyper-focused, but times when I'm not at all. But now, the way that I see art and sobriety, because of that moment, is I find the two to be very much intertwined, and I'm really big on the holistic side of health. So, you know, kind of figuring out ways to create these rhythms in our life that bring all of the aspects together. And so that's a little bit about me and my story. And also it's just important for me to acknowledge for my own well-being, and also to carry a message that things do get better for everybody else. You know, and if you are in a really low place at the moment, perhaps you've had a few bad things happening, or perhaps you've had nothing bad happening, but you still feel bad, you know, because that happens to me as well, that's the truth. It's important to know that you're not alone, you know. For me, coming to appreciate that I'm not alone has been really, really important. And the one thing I want to end on, I think, is that the most difficult moments in our lives, in my experience, and I know in my friends and other creative people's experience, these are the moments that potentially can be shaping your story in ways that we're unable to perceive at that moment in time. And so I think a little bit of faith is necessary in these dark moments, and a bit of trust in the process, despite the fact that it feels so horrible and there's no pleasure to be derived from it whatsoever. But it is through those dark moments that the light starts to creak in. So yeah, you know, if you've had any low moments and they have been pivotal, or they've really changed you, or they've really helped to, you know, get something new going, they've been a bit of a catalyst for a creative moment in your life, then please leave a comment below and let other people know that they're not alone, and that through darkness we can arrive at a place of meaning. Because this is what this channel is all about, really. It's about creating sobriety, creating that life that we really want to live after we make the decision to come into recovery, you know, because for me the hard work started when I got into recovery, and I know that's the case for a lot of other people. So yeah, that's me sharing probably the hardest moment I've been through in recovery. And you know, I'll just end on this. The last thing I think it's really important to acknowledge is that even now, 3 years away from that moment, I still don't feel like I'm really over it 100%, but I'm definitely over it enough so that it doesn't impact my daily existence. You know, and it's great what people say about grief. They say that grief doesn't diminish over time, but in fact that our capacity to get on with things despite the grief increases. So that, you know, the grief doesn't shrink as such. In fact, the vessel that we are, which surrounds the grief, increases. And so I'll leave you with that lovely thought. If this video spoke to you, leave a comment. As per usual, connect with me, you know. Yeah, it's really nice to hear from people, and I wish you all the best.